Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Marco Russo. My email is on the slide. I want to describe briefly, shortly, what is this presentation about. This presentation is named the Power Query in Modern Corporate BI, and the idea is to quickly introduce Power Query and mostly discuss about how the self-service BI and Power Query can be merged in the corporate BI scenario. So this is the idea of this session. I will mix a few concepts, architectural concepts, with many details about how to do certain things with Power Query and other tools in the Power BI stack. So I work as a BI consultant and mentor. I wrote several books about Power Pivot and Analysis Services Tabular, but my interest is about business intelligence, and today Power BI is the hottest topic. As I said, what is Power Query? Power Query is an add-in for Excel that you can install also, on both Excel 2010 and Excel 2013, and it enables more features if you have also a Power BI subscription. Fundamentally, it enables end user to get data from different data sources and create data models in Excel with Power Pivot, or just import data in Excel. And you can also apply transformation to the data, especially thanks to a hidden feature that is very, very powerful, which is the M language, which is probably not something that every Excel user will use, but is very, very powerful. And could be leveraged by advanced users, very advanced users in Excel, to apply complex transformations. So Power Query has a user interface with several elements. We have connectors to access to different data sources. We have transformations that we can apply to the data that we gather from different data sources. And then we have the M language. Very important, especially in a corporate BI scenario, is the fact that we can share the result of a transformation. Not the data, but the query, the transformation, the definition of the query that we define in our environment. So I would like to show you what you can do with Excel and Power Query, because this will introduce us to the topic of the session, which is what happened in a corporate BI scenario. So let's start from the beginning. And here I have Excel and Power Query installed. I can connect to several databases, but since my goal is to discuss about corporate BI, let's start connecting to SQL Server, to AdventureWorks, our data warehouse in AdventureWorks. So I type demo, and I can see all the databases, and for each database, all the tables, all the views, all the data that my user, I'm connected with my user in this moment, my user can see in this database. So if my DBA, or better, if the DBA in the company is my friend, he gave me a lot of accesses to everything. And for example, I could select multiple items, and I can choose to import a few tables. As you see, I have several views here, and we will discuss views in a few moments. I can get data directly from my, DIM customer, DIM product, and fact internet sales, for example. So I just get 3 tables in this case, and I choose to load these tables directly into the data model in my Power Pivot data model. When you do that, you see that Power Query does something, and while Power Query is working, I can spend time. No, I cannot spend time. I can show you that we have in Get External Data several types of connectors. So we can connect to relational databases, we can connect to external data sources, and so we can create a data model that merge together data from Facebook, Exchange, SQL Server, and so on, and also from OData feed. Now that we have our data, we can go in our Power Pivot data model, and we can see that we not only imported data, we also imported relationships. Now, you say, Marco, this is the same thing that you can do by using just Power Pivot. And until this point, this is true. But what we can do at this point, we can apply some changes to the data, to the queries, because each of these table is in reality a query that we may change. So for example, I can go here in the editor, and this is the user interface of Power Query that enables me to, for example, go in this English product name and say I want to see these names all in uppercase, because, you know, Office team taught me that uppercase for the titles is very nice, and so now I want to use the same approach. You can apply more complex transformation, and there are many other sessions in this conference about how you can use all these tools to split columns, merge columns, pivot tables, and so on. So we can apply many transformations. And what is interesting, if you remember, this is a table in a database that has relationships with other tables. And so, for example, we can go here and we can see that the dim product subcategory column has a value, which is something that we can explode or expand. And we can choose, for example, to get, you know, the English product subcategory name just here. So without adding another table into my data model, I'm getting the value of the English product subcategory name from another table. Now, this is always null because we have just a few rows. But as soon as I apply and close this query, what I obtain in my data model is an updated table, dim product, that will have my, let me check, dim product here, will have my subcategory somewhere, I hope, yes, where I see all the subcategory that I downloaded. And I can repeat this again and again with all the tables. So you understand that this is not exactly what you can do with Power Pivot. In Power Pivot, I should have imported the table, I should have created a calculated column, and so on. So we leverage in some way the data model that we have in SQL Server. We are creating a more complex query that is described in a language that is called M, because in reality, the query that I'm creating is visible here as a text file. So remember, this is the exact definition of Power Query query. This is converted actually in a SQL query when I execute this, but this text file can be easily copied into an email. And this is what we will share in Power BI portal when we share this query with other people in our company. We just share this definition, not the data. Other people will be able to, for example, re-execute this query against the same data model, or just change a few details, maybe not using the editor, but using the nice user interface that this product has, by going in each single step and applying changes to each single formula that you see here, or directly going here and using this user interface. Okay, so this is more or less what you can do with Power Pivot. This is the general idea of what you can do. Now, let me go back to the slides. So we have seen that we have connectors. Connectors enable us to get data from different data sources. We have, in particular, one new connector, which is the SAP Business Object BI Universe. There was a session this morning about this, which is very interesting, also because the user interface that you see in SAP will be soon available also for accessing cubes in MDX. So this is an interesting thing that will come. We have seen that we have many transformations that are available in the ribbon. This is probably outdated because there was a new release a couple of days or weeks ago, and probably there is some new feature that is not included here now. And we have seen that we have the M language to apply transformations to the data. The M language is a functional language. It does not have real iterative statements, so you have to learn Lambda functions to use this language to do cycles. But At first, it may be hard for someone who has a VBA background, but it is very, very, very powerful. And fundamentally, as I said, we don't expect an end user, regular Excel user, to learn M. But many, many very advanced users will find this very interesting. I also mentioned that there is a very interesting function, expression evaluate. You can get a text string, and you can parse this string and execute it dynamically, which is very, very wonderful. That said, what can we do with this tool? First of all, we can share queries. We can also create functions in M. And I suggest you to look the recording of other Power Query sessions where these examples are shown in much detail. And once you do that, and we will see a few examples of sharing later during this session, we can share this information with other people. We can simply send an email copying the text file, for example. And we can do this with anyone. But within our company, if we have a Power BI subscription, we have a repository which enables us to share these queries in a more useful way, with more information, some documentation, and also permission who can see what. We will see this later, so I don't spend time now going in detail on that. Now, wonderful. But if you are here, chances are that you have a data warehouse, maybe some cube in analysis services, corporate reports, and I assume that in this room there will be people who say, we will never use any self-service tool in our company because we don't want to go in a mess of Excel hell, or anyone has his own version of the truth and something like that. There could be other people who say, we don't have a real data warehouse. We have several data marts, and we would like to use this system to consolidate everything, or we may have many different positions. So I want to try to think about what is a scenario where corporate BI can help self-service BI and in some way control what is happening. Because the point is that self-service BI is considered dangerous by many people, I think about VBA and so on, because of the freedom that it gives to the end users. And this freedom is fundamentally not something different than what they do today. It is just that today they do this in a hidden way. So they copy data in text files, in Excel files, in Access files, and do everything without knowing without informing the DBA of what they are really doing. So the idea is that if you are in this position, you may think about a way to help these people that want to use a self-service BI tool, and providing some help, you may get some control back. This is the general idea. Let's see why. Classical BI solution is data warehouse, single version of the truth, one or more data marts, departmental version of the truth, OLAP cubes, reporting, and client that connects. Now we have this self-service BI force that as a ghost control and is applied on everything, and is the nightmare that we have. What may happen with a self-service BI? It may happen that we have a Power Pivot used by the client. But Power Pivot is a database. It's like Access. You can copy data there. And you can get data, if you have rights, from the data mart. You can get data from the data warehouse. You can get data from the OLTP system. Do you have this information? I need this information by yesterday. Oh, we don't have this table in the data warehouse. We need to do something. Oh, okay. Can you give me this table in the SAP or in the ERP system? Oh, yes, this is just a copy of the table. Don't use. Oh, okay. And you start creating a report that will be used every day by many people. Or from the OLAP cube. You get a copy of the data. Maybe you copy and paste a pivot table. You know, I know. Your user copy and paste the pivot table and start creating strange reports. So this is what may happen, not including also external data sources, of course. Now, let's see what we could try to make happen. What should happen if we do something well? Well, the IT department tries not to be the evil, but to be a friend. A friend offers help. Help means I give you a view of the data. I provide you some help. I provide you the access to the data through my door, my view over the data mart, over the data warehouse, over the OLTP. It seems the same, yes, but in reality, you define a contract between you and your users. As soon as you do that, you can still use Power Query to do transformation, to do your data model with Power Pivot, and you can also get data directly from the cube. The cube is already a contract. The cube is not a problem. The cube is already something that you have to keep over time. You break the cube structure, you break existing reports, existing pivot table. Nobody will remove one dimension or one attribute in one dimension. But when you think about the relational database, you may restructure tables. You may rename columns. You may change an attribute that is no longer a one-to-one attribute, is a one-to-many. Now we have two tables, and now we broke existing reports. In SQL, this happens every day. But in a cube, no. So yes, it's OK accessing to the cube. And if we have access to external data sources, we in some way want to validate these queries so that user will know when data has been approved or not. And we put this data in Power Pivot, and the user will continue to create their own data models, their own reports. So this is the idea, my dream. How can we do that? What are the steps required to do that? So let's start to think. First mantra, use views. At the end of the day, you are exposing tables of data. Now, from the point of view of the end user, accessing a view or a table is more or less the same, except one detail that I will show you. And this view is a contract that I promise I will respect. As a DBA, as an IT, I will provide you data in this form every day in the future. This is not going to change. And you know that you can trust me. So I give you something, I get back something else. I know that you are using these columns. I know that you are using this table. I have to keep this view valid in the future. So I do a contract. I try to, be compliant with the contract. I provide business keys. I know. I love star schema. I love Kimball. Surrogate keys are good. Now, try to explain that this number that identify a product is not the product code, but is required in order to create your queries. For an end user, it's meaningless, and it should be. The surrogate key has no meaning outside of the data mart. It's a technical detail. We don't have to expose this information to external users, also because we may want to change it. We want to be free to change, to rebuild surrogate keys. Once you put a surrogate key outside of your wall, what could happen? Someone can create the budget over surrogate keys. And trust me, you don't want this to happen. You want the budget to be defined over business keys, not surrogate keys. So we expose views that hide a few details of the internal implementation of your star schema. And you may think that I'm crazy, but if you have a data warehouse and data marts, we may think to offer also access to the data warehouse, not just the data mart, also the data warehouse. Now, if you are those that creates a data warehouse as a sum of data marts using Kimball, you don't understand the difference here, because for you, data marts and data warehouse are the same thing. But in another model, like Inmon or other structures, the data warehouse might have a different structure. And in this case, we offer this. Not only that, we could also afford to offer a view over our ERP, because you want to get data updated 5 minutes ago. You want to see the current availability of products. We need to create this view. But we offer this because in this way, we know what we are doing. If we need to create indexes, if we need to create snapshots, we can do that. And we offer this through views. Of course, we will provide a limited history of this data. So this is an effort that we have to do, of course, and we can have something back for that. So I will show you in a moment how we can create views. But I can do this now, so we can go out of the slides for a moment. So for example, if you remember what I did before, I created a few tables. I've got a few tables with Power Query from AdventureWorks. I choose a few tables, imported the tables, done. Now, what I want to do are these views, fundamentally. I created a schema, because I will provide rights to the schema, easier to manage for the security. I create a few views in this schema, one for each table, one for each entity. I like to talk about entities, not tables. And I have the calendar, I have the products. The products contains already a join between subcategory, category. So if I know that my user will have to join tables, I can do this in advance. Why I have to force them to do that? I have customers, and as you see, if I have some flag, MF, I also display a name. I know that if they are going to use Power Pivot, there is compression. I don't care about duplicating data. Not a problem. But at the same time, I'm not storing this duplicated data in my data model. I have the view to offer this. And I do this transformation. I do this transformation also for the sales. And look what I'm doing here. In the sales table, I'm not exposing the surrogate keys of the fact table. I'm exposing, for example, for the customer, the business key. I'm exposing the business key, not the surrogate key, because in this way, my user will not see something that he is not able to understand. And in this way, if he accesses only the sales table, it is meaningful, even outside of the star schema. Of course, this is a cost. You have to do a couple of joins. I know that. But if you are a good DBA in SQL, there are many ways to optimize these things. At the same time, if you look at the customers table, I'm not exposing the surrogate key. There is no reason to expose the surrogate key for my user that will use self-service BI. But I had to do that for the products, because the products is a slowly changing dimension of type 2. So it is up to you. If you know that you need to expose a slowly changing dimension of type 2, you have to do that. But hopefully, this will happen only for 1 or 2 dimensions of your data marts, not for all the dimensions of your data mart. Okay, so we can go back to the slides. As you have seen, in the views, I can create a few simple transformations, but I know that many transformations, many simple transformations, all the transformation that you can do row by row, I don't care too much. I know that my user has the wonderful Power Query that is very easy to use if you want to combine field, if you want to split field, if you want to put uppercase, I don't spend my time creating a lot of different columns just to help people that are not able to fix the presentation of the data. But I try to avoid my user to do too many joins. This is something that I want to avoid. I'm not saying that they don't have to do joins, but I want to avoid them to do that because they could do the wrong thing. I want to avoid that. So I try to avoid preparing too many simple transformations in my views, but I'm worried about the complex things. how to expose the calendar, the right calendar in my company. I want to show what is the week number that is the same for everyone in my company. I'm worried about any business logic that has to be included in these views. These are the things that are important to me. Sorry. There is one thing that would be nice, and I have to say today we still don't have everything for this. Once I have all this information, once I create my views, I would like to offer a way to simplify the navigation into these views, into this information available to my user. Today I can create documentation, I can create an internal website, an intranet, and I can certainly do many things, and I could also use one feature that we have available in Power Query and in Power BI, which enables me to save a query, which could correspond one-to-one to an existing view, and create some small documentation and make it easy to search and retrieve this information. So this is one possible approach, but of course, I know that this is not enough. We probably need more. This is something that we need some other tools probably in the future to improve that part. And another idea is that when you created the views, you can, since you know how these views will be used, you know that the columnar database, the columnar technology used by Power Pivot can be leveraged to compress data. So there are columns that should not be exposed easily because they are memory consuming. So for example, transactions ID, timestamps, something like that. So you can try to present the data in a way that will improve the compression ratio. So this is something that you can do to help the user and to avoid they, call you because memory exhausted, memory error, I'm not able to load the entire data, the entire table, and something like that. So this means that there are many considerations about how to present data that could be compressed better, and I think there are sessions about Power Pivot to do that, and this knowledge could be moved to the views that you expose. Do not over-denormalize means that you have to find the right balance, because from a compression point of view, having a single table could be better than having many tables. But at the same time, too many relationships are expensive. So the star schema is still a good model. If you expose views that can be seen as a star schema, it is better. Now, I created my views. What happened when I use my views in my data model? So let me go back here. Okay, I have to go here. Go back here. So this time I create a new file. I go in Power Query, and I connect to the same demo server. But as you remember, Power BI was the schema where I saved my, my views. And in this case, I see here the tables that I want to include. So I include sales, products, customers, and maybe also calendar. And I load everything into the data model. I click load, and I start loading this data. Now, my views are executed behind the scene, and at the end of this job, I will be able to navigate into the data. If you remember, in the previous workbook, relationships between tables were automatically generated. This time, unfortunately, the price we have to pay is that if we go in Power Pivot, since we loaded views and not tables, we don't have foreign keys in the data model, and we don't have relationship. I know that it seems something, oh, we lost a feature, but in my opinion, I am happy to, to convince users to track product key, customer code. Remember, these names are the names that you expose in the views. So it is just a question of using the right names, making life easier to the user, done. So we fundamentally saved a few seconds using relationships. But in this way, we are using our contracts, which is much better. And now we have a data model that we can use, work, and so on. And all the other features are available. We can change, the query that we created. We can edit the query. We can apply other transformations, and so on. So the only feature that we are missing now is the automatic detection of relationships. What could do an user at this point? If you remember, the products table had the products table here has a surrogate key, but also the application key, the business key. So you might have a scenario, a business scenario, where the analysis requires a slowly changing dimension type 1, where the table has only one row per product instead of many rows for the same product, like in this case. If you see this table, you see that this product has the same code but has 3 different surrogate keys because we have different prices over time. So if for your analysis, this is not an interesting thing. You want to obtain a slowly changing dimension type 1, you need to do what? You may ask to the IT to create a view, or you can use Power Query. So for example, and in order to save some time, so I think it's not interesting in this case to look at how I do all the steps. I load a workbook that I prepared before. In this workbook, I created a transformation. So starting from the original table with the products, 1 row per version of the product, I simply removed a few columns. I removed all the columns that may change for the same product, and I applied the distinct. I removed the duplicates. So technically, I did something that I will not say an advanced user. An average user could be able to do, because once you understand the data, these 2 transformations that I created can be obtained by using the user interface. So you fundamentally select a few columns and you apply distinct, nothing hard. But if you think that this is too hard for your average user, you can do this. You can simply go here and say, well, I created my products slowly change dimension type 1, and I just used the technical name. I share this query with other people in my company. This is what you can do to share the query. When you share the query, you can specify not only the name. You can say unique products. We may use a name that is not technical, right? Unique products. You can write a description, a longer description that will be helpful for people who are making a search. And of course, I have a warning here because I'm using a local database of my notebook in this moment. And it warns me, Marco, if you share this query, it will be connected to your local notebook that could be offline at the time other user will try to use it, because I'm not using a server in my network. And that's fine. This area, sharing settings, is, in particular this checkbox, is not available to any user. Is available also to, is available only to users that have a certain role, data steward. I will show you this in a moment. And fundamentally, this enables me to certify this query. Usually, anyone can share a query, but only certain user can certify queries produced by themselves or other people. And I can also choose who can see this query. just me, everyone, specific people. Since I'm connecting to my Power BI tenant, in this tenant I have my user and Alberto Ferrari works with me. I can say, well, I want to show this query to Alberto, for example, but not to other people in our company. And I can specify this here. You can also specify if you want to upload a few rows so that in the preview you will see some data, an example of data that will be extracted by using this query. So once you do that, this query, the text file that describes the query, is saved on the cloud in the Power BI tenant. And at that point, it will appear in these shared queries, also to other users in my company that are able to do searches. When you do a search, you can specify whether you want to search queries only within the organization or on internet or on both, or only queries that you created before. So if I type products, I should be able to see unique products that I created a few minutes ago. As you see, there are many other queries, and I will show you that we can have this one, for example, has been created yesterday or the other day, which is similar to the one. And this is the preview. These are the rows that have been saved before, something that help you looking at what data are you sharing. So this is an interesting tool because it enables to share the query, but remember, the goal for us is to provide data that a user can safely share. So by using views, we can control what users are doing. If we provide direct access to the tables, we are no longer in control of that. Okay.
Marco, you said you can only share in that way if you have Office 365 and Power BI, right?
The question is, we can share the query only if we have Office 365 and Power BI, and the answer is yes. The sharing feature uses a repository in the cloud that is available only if you have a Power BI subscription. Today, this is the feature we have. But
could you copy the text and email that to somebody and they could use that?
the question is, but if I copy the text of the query and I send it to another user, will it work? And the answer is yes, of course. We will not have the repository shared across the enterprise, but if we want to use email, we are free to do that.
Well, for that matter, you could also save the workbook.
If you save, the question is, you can also save the workbook. Of course, when you save the workbook, everything is there. We are just talking about how to share not only the file, not only the workbook, not only the message, but having a repository that make it easier to share this, not with a couple of people, but with maybe 1,000 of people in a company. Okay, so we have seen already how to use Power Query. So what is the role of Power Query in this scenario? This is the demo that I already shown you, is a self-service ETL tool that can transform data that you can use to share queries and expression across your company. And the queries that you write are integrated within the Power Pivot data model, which is interesting for one thing. Today, my problem is, okay, I am providing data. Can I know which columns of this data are actually used and in which reports? Today, this is not possible. But using views, at least I restrict the columns and the tables that I share, because if I don't use views, I don't know how many tables and columns are used in my company and in which reports. The interesting thing about using Power Query, in my opinion, is that from a technical point of view, it's possible to analyze the description, the expression tree of the query, and recognize which are the dependencies across external metadata. Today, there is nothing. I'm just talking about possible features. But the idea is that from a technical point of view, providing Power Query as a tool that applies transformations is a smart thing because in the future, we are not losing the ability to detect what is the actual usage of this query, because we want not only know which columns we are exposing, but which columns are used and in which reports. And this is something that if you use other tools could be very hard, because everyone may use his own language, his own script. Imagine this in VBA, it would be a nightmare. Power Query offers something that, I mean, maybe, I don't know when, but one day could be interesting. So I'm not worried about using Power Query. This is the concept that I want to transmit. So if we expose tables, we have an automatic detection of relationships, whereas the cons of that is that we lack the decoupling layer that we need to know who is using what. By using views, we have this decoupling layer that helps us tracking usage. And we can, of course, have to pay a small price for using the views, that is we lack the automatic detection of relationships in Power Pivot. But in my opinion, this is a price that I can pay without any problem. Data mart and data warehouse. As I said, it's important that we expose application keys, natural keys, whatever you call it. So the data warehouse should be already organized in this way, especially if you use the Kimball approach. But the data mart usually use surrogate keys. And we should try to expose only application keys, even if we have to show the surrogate keys for slowly changing dimension of type 2 for the reasons that you have seen in the previous example. So if we expose data from the data mart, it should be easier to obtain the same numbers that you have in corporate reports, because you are actually using the same data. Exposing data from the data warehouse usually means that you are exposing raw data without some internal calculation, internal indexes, internal filter of data. And this could be something more dangerous. So it is not the default choice offering direct access to the data warehouse, but sometimes we can do that, but we have to be careful about the content of these tables. We have seen that we can publish queries in Power BI. When you publish a query, you can specify the visibility level, and this is a security feature that has been explained in another Power Query session, fundamentally in order to avoid that you move data that should not be visible when the query folding is executed. And we have to validate data, and this data validation is an action that is in charge of a particular person that is called the data steward. The data steward is a role that you can define in Power BI, in the Power BI portal. So where is this thing? So let me take a look at the administrative website. Here we have, let me see, role management. As you see in this page, this is the administrative user interface of Power BI, and here you can specify who is the administrator of Power BI, but you can assign the role of data steward. In this case, also Alberto is a data steward in SQL BI, and both me and Alberto can open a query in here, for example, this one, and we can sorry, not edit. I have to do the properties. Sorry. Let me edit. I have to open this. Okay, let me open this one. Okay. So when I saved this query, oh, sorry. I was in the wrong place. I have to go in Power Query Workbook, this one. So I open this query, I go in the share window, And here I can click on this checkbox. When I do that, I certify this query for others. And as I said, I can do this only because I'm in the role of data steward. What happened is that at this point, in the repository, you see this particular symbol, which means this query is certified, has been validated by someone else, in this case myself. But okay, so this is the data steward role and the demo that I've shown you. Now, this is the responsibility of the data steward, and of course, it should be someone who knows something of the internal structure of the data, not only the business value of the data, but also the internal structure of the data to understand if what you are doing is right, if there could be performance issues related to the query, and something like that. Now, what about other data sources that we may have in the company? Because, okay, if we have the data warehouse, the data mart, SQL Server, fine. We have seen, we create the view, and we are done. If we have a report, we could use the OData feed that is available in Power Pivot. Today, Power Query does not support this feed, but maybe that this will change in the future. So today, if you want to import data from a report, you have to use Power Pivot. You cannot do this in Power Query by now, so you have to do the transformation by using DAX. I hope that this will change in the future. From a security point of view, it would be interesting having this feature in Power Query, because technically Power Query would enable me to call the same report several times with different arguments, which is something that I'm not able to do in Power Pivot. So this is the reason why I would like to use this feature. Analysis services. Today, okay, let me talk about the nice thing is that tomorrow, someday tomorrow, we will see direct support of analysis services in Power Query, which means that we will be able to see the dimensions, hierarchies, attributes, create a sort of extraction of dimensions and measure groups, and create an MDX query, or maybe a DAX query one day. And this would be very, very nice, because as I said, accessing a cube, accessing an analysis services database is safe, because we have already a contract there with the user. That's fine. If you want to do this today, one problem that you have using Power Pivot, Power Query does not have access to analysis services directly. If you use Power Pivot, it works, but is not very nice how it works, especially for a small detail, the column names. Column names that you obtain as a result when you connect to analysis services in Power Pivot, for example, is something that is very hard to use. And also renaming the columns there is something that is very, very, very time wasting. So one idea is, again, I can use views to expose data from analysis services through a linked server in SQL Server. So what I do usually is something like that. Let me show you. Oops. I open SQL Server Management Studio, and I have a database here, which is this AdventureWorks SSAS views. This database has no tables and has a couple of views, sales by year and sales by year tab. The difference is that one is connected to multidimensional and the other to analysis services tabular. Let me show you the definition of these views. And here you can see my MDX query included within an open query, which is, I created the view for my user, fundamentally. But the most important part is this one. I simplify the life to my user, renaming the column name, the strange column name created by this provider, into year or sales. An easy column to see. So if I execute this query, this is what my user will see. A simple table generated with a multidimensional, an MDX query in multidimensional. If you want to do the same with tabular, not a problem. And you can also use DAX. But of course, by using DAX, you have, let me show you this. And again, you can rename columns in the same way I did for multidimensional in order to obtain better columns. So today, I suggest you to use this approach to simplify the life of your Power Pivot user, offer views. If you offer views in this way, they can also use Power Query, of course, because this is SQL. This is a SQL table. For Power Query, this is a SQL table, nothing different. OData integration in corporate BI. Power BI offers a tool that is the Data Management Gateway, which enables to expose data that you have within your company in order to enable the refresh of workbook published on a Power BI website, pushing data out from your corporate BI environment and moving it to the cloud in order to refresh your Power Pivot workbook published on the Power BI's website. This data management gateway is actually not something that an end user can use as he wants. It has to be controlled by the IT. So we have tools to check the rights of who can use what. So it's not that once you install the data management gateway, anyone can access to any table. It's not this. We have something like this user interface here, where we see the gateway. This is a server that I have in Europe. Hopefully it's running now. And we have a few data sources that we enabled. So I create a data source, and by doing that, I define what is visible. And I can also define, by going here, users that are enabled to see this data source and to refresh workbook connected to this data source. Okay? So there is some control over what is exposed and the security applied to that. Okay? So we have some control over that. So the data management gateway also enables for a particular data source to expose data as OData feed. What does it mean? Fundamentally, the idea is that we offer the content of that table as an OData source within the company. And this enables other products that don't have a direct connection with the driver for this particular database to get data. And there are a few limitations that are described in this slide. I will not spend too much time on that. And this OData feed cannot be used directly by Excel and Power Pivot just for a security reason, for authentication reason, because the organizational account that has to be used to connect to the OData source today is only supported by Power Query. So when you connect to this data source, you have to authenticate with the organizational account that you use in your Power BI tenant. And maybe that if you have your domain connected, I'm not sure about that. If you have your domain federated with a tenant of Power BI, maybe this work also in Power Query, in Power Pivot and in Excel. But in many places, this does not happen, and so today, Power Query also enables you to write a username and login, and it works. In reality, what happened? Power Query access to the Power BI service on the cloud just to know what is available. At that point, it is redirected to the gateway internal within your company. So if you don't have a physical access to the data management gateway, you are not able to retrieve this data. So it is not that you get all the data. The cloud service only acts as a repository of services available. And the data management gateway provides the data using the OData feed. So you don't need the driver to connect directly to the database. You just need to reach the data management gateway. But of course, the server could be on another machine that you don't have physical access. You need the access to the data management gateway. A more interesting thing is that you can use this not only for SQL Server and Oracle, because the data management gateway today only supports Oracle and SQL Server. But by using linked servers, I can already expose analysis services like I did before. And thanks to another component that enable to publish an integration services package through a linked server, I can actually open any data source within my company that I can put in an integration services transformation available through data management gateway and to any particular, any type of transformation. I have an example for that I think is very interesting, because it is interesting also not for Power BI, but for many other things. We're talking about this. This is a package, an integration services package that contains this data streaming destination. The URL to download this destination is in the slide. You can apply this in a data flow like I'm doing now. So you can have any transformation, you can get any data from anywhere, you can apply any transformation, and instead of writing the result into a SQL Server table or into Excel, you just put this into this data streaming destination. At this point, you have this package that you have to publish in the integration services repository on your SQL Server. And at this point, I hope I have the slides that explain this. We will see this schema working. Our package published data into the data streaming destination. We read this data through an OLEDB provider for integration services that is used by a linked server in SQL. And we expose this information as a view in a SQL Server database. Every time you request the data from this SQL Server database, you run the integration services package. So for example, I prepared a few screenshots because the connection to the server where I had this demo was not so reliable, so I prefer to show you this in this way, but I think it will be easy to understand. In order in order to show that I am applying a transformation, I created a derived column in integration services. So I read the data from a table, and I apply another column where I put the date and time of the execution of the package. I created this derived column using the getUTC-date in the execution time column. So this is a column added to a table that retrieve the data about book rankings on Amazon. We wrote a small program that every hour download the information from Amazon, because we know we want to see how many reviews we have in our books, what is the ranking, and so on. And every hour we get this data, because Amazon every hour update its statistics. We store this data in a few SQL Server tables, and we want to provide this information available through this system. So we created this package, and we added this column just to be sure that we are using integration services. We published this package in the repository of integration services, in the catalog of integration services. And as you see, we have this provider that is an OLEDB provider for SQL Server integration services. And this is a linked server, SSIS feed server, or you can use whatever name you want. This name has been used in this oh, sorry, I had to start this here. Let me see if it works. This name has been used in the connection string that you see here. If I run this query, if I execute this query, you see that we wait for a few seconds, maybe 4 or 5 seconds the first time, because, of course, we had to run this package. The table that we retrieve is just 100 rows. There are no particular transformations here. So you have to consider this 4 or 5 seconds as the latency time to invoke an external package. However, the second time I executed this, I spent only 2 seconds. So actually, the price to pay, the overhead for calling this package is not so high if you think that you are exposing this to a consumption for people who is creating reports that are not updated every second. Probably if I wait 2 seconds more for one table, it's okay. Since I expose this through a view, to my Power Query or Power Pivot users, this will be a table like anyone else in SQL Server. But in reality, behind that could be a connection to MySQL, to Oracle, to analysis services like we have seen before, or to any complex transformation that you want to apply real time. If you want to create a package that calls a web service, it works. This is very interesting not only for usage with all data, but also for a general usage in a company. Even if you don't have Power BI, I think is very interesting. Now, we can create all these things in our data model, but when we publish our workbook in Power BI, in the Power BI's website, we are copying a Power Pivot model that contains an extraction of data that we updated now in our local computer. We want to be able to refresh this every day. So the data management gateway helps us doing that. And how it works. Fundamentally, the idea is that we have a user interface that I will show you in a few moments that enables us to schedule, to define the frequency of the refresh. Every day, every week, something like that. Or just now. Just now means as soon as possible. That usually is a few minutes. I hope it will be faster. But anyway, when this happens, the workbook in SharePoint Online connects to the Gateway Cloud Service that connects to the data management gateway that you installed on a server in your company. This sends the query to SQL Server or to Oracle. Now, SQL Server could have our linked server that execute an integration services package, return results, compress the data, so the data are moved outside of your of the data management gateway in a compressed way. And finally, the workbook in SharePoint Online is updated. So this is the flow of what happened every time a refresh is requested. Let me show you the user interface for that. So for example, in this case, I have this, you remember my book sales is a report that we have with the ranking of the books. This is updated every day. This morning it has been updated at 8:05. And every day this is refreshed automatically. So how it works? In Power BI, you have a small button here with schedule data refresh that shows you the history of all the refreshes that we made. Every time it works, nice. You see here the running time for every refresh. But most important, the settings. You can define the frequency, daily, weekly. You can define a deadline. You will not refresh this after this date. And you can also send a notification if something goes wrong. And hopefully, usually, it works in the last days.
Is that a notification of failure or just a notification?
No, this is just in case of a failure.
Okay, so
just in case of,
you don't know.
if it works, you don't know.
No news is good news.
This is the idea. Yes, this, the note is, this is if the notification system does not fail, of course, yes. You know, something wrong can always happen. So, okay, so this is the feature of the refresh. In reality, you can also do a direct refresh if certain condition exists. Now, if you're using the data management gateway, the refresh can be only done in a scheduled way, so in an asynchronous mode. But if you copy your data on Azure, on SQL Azure, or on SQL Server in an Azure virtual machine, you can actually do a direct refresh, at least with Power Pivot. I don't know if Power Query will do that. No, the Power Query does not support the direct refresh. So if you, right, I'm checking, okay. I have part of the team here, so. Okay. If you consider when you schedule the refresh on the cloud, you have to figure out what will happen at that time. If you have many workbooks, you will receive requests at a certain point in time, and you have to, you have to think about the workload that you might have for providing this information. But hopefully, you don't have to move too much data to these workbooks. So, conclusion, and then we will have time for a few questions. As you have seen, even if I think there are many features that we will see in the future, we already have an idea of self-service BI that can work and can be managed by the IT. And I believe that providing support for self-service BI will help a corporate BI project to continue in the future because it will be much more valuable than it is today. So it's something that can help everyone. It's a win-win, in my opinion, if you handle this in a good way. Because I have seen companies that fundamentally thought to solve the problem with Power Pivot, when in reality, they solved the last mile problem. They had 95% of the system working. They just missed the final report because they were continuing to ask to people who don't understand the business to create a report, and they were spending time talking. Now we can enable more users within the company that knows the process, that know the business, that know the numbers, to create their own reports without worrying too much about retrieving data. We can just help them, and we probably can collaborate more. Power Query is an interesting tool in this scenario because it can be managed by the IT, and it provides an enormous amount of information also in the future to analyze what users are doing. My only concern is don't give access to the tables to the end user, because this is a lock-in that will be hard to remove in the future. So if you have a corporate BI scenario, probably you can provide access to the user, but you have to provide them a few views that you will have to maintain in the future. So follow the guidelines and don't expose data that are going to change sooner or later. SQL Server can be used as an additional gateway to get data from other data sources other than those that are supported now. So today, you can already access to analysis services, but also to other databases that are not officially supported by Data Management Gateway, just by using SQL Server as another gateway. Sessions related. I put the entire list because probably you will want to watch a recording of the sessions that have been already delivered yesterday and on Monday. Other resources. And remember to complete the evaluation. This is very important because you may not know that Microsoft is giving $1 for charity for every evaluation, for every person that make evaluation. So it is very important. This is the QR code, and I have a few minutes for your questions. Thank you very much. Question? Yes? Okay, I repeat the question. If I use the linked server to connect to analysis services, how the authentication works? Of course, in that particular case, I think that you may have some limitation. I should think about this because you connect to. Let me think. In theory, I have to check. I don't want to say something wrong because in theory you may have a problem moving the user connected to SQL towards analysis services. But I don't remember exactly what we can do because maybe that there are scenarios where we can transfer the credential depending on the configuration and on the settings. I don't remember. If you send me an email, we will check this later. Question?
It was cool to see how you can just write a select statement against an SSIS package.
Yes.
That was possible. Does the user authentication pass through to the SSIS package when you do that?
Okay, I repeat the question. In a previous demo, I wrote a SQL Server statement that did a select over a connection that was actually executing an integration services package. What about security? In this particular case, I think that for analysis services, we have to check. But for integration services, I'm pretty sure that considering all the processes involved, may be that we do not transfer the control of the current user. So probably this could be, from a security perspective, something to be careful. But you can always provide access. The reason why I use views is because I can provide security over the view. So even if I am executing the package with another user, because this also depends on this depends on many things. We have to check the package, we have to check the execution environment, we have to check several things. But at the end of the day, I can put security on SQL view. It's a single object. I don't want to expose directly the linked server. I want to expose the view, because in this way, I control who can access this. Question?
Kind of going off of this, you use the link server as part of that connection for the SSIS package. Would the security be in the actual link server, or would it be in the source control, the source connection? Would you specify security there, or could you in either place, or hop, skip, and a jump?
I have to say, these are good questions because I didn't. Exploded all the implications of security, because you may have, there are there are a lot of combination, because first of all, we are assuming that we are using integrated security. So, and it could be not the case, because you may have in integration services, you may connect to a database that doesn't have this type of security. At the same time, you may have a connection with something that impersonates another user, because once you call integration services, within integration services, you might have a lot of things. And so an answer that always works is hard to say. Let's say that in the simplest scenario, probably, again, I would like to check this because I don't remember all the details, but I think that compared to a simple linked server, in this case, we have other processes involved. It is not just a SQL that is running a client connected to another server. You have SQL Server connecting to an external process, because the package is not executed within the process of SQL Server. SQL Server run another process. This process executes the package that connects as a client to another server. Even when you connect to SQL with the same SQL, you are executing, a worker. You are moving outside, and then you call back another connection, but it's not the same process. It's not the same thread that is doing this. So I would like to check. This is something that I didn't. If you send me an email later, I will be happy to investigate on that, because I think there are many implications. You're welcome. Question? Can you repeat, sorry, louder?
Can a user filter the query before pulling in all the data?
Okay. The question is, can a user filter the query? Now, if you are using, in which condition? Linked server or?
No, just say it's a view, but it has millions of rows.
Okay. If I'm exposing a view, and I create a query in Power Query, right? And I define a few conditions, a few word conditions. Then what happened? That my query in Power Query generates a SQL statement that contains the view and the word condition. So in theory, SQL Server can execute the word condition within the same query, and so Power Query does not receive all the rows and then filter, only receive the rows that are already filtered by default. There are several conditions in which in Power Query you can stop the query folding process, so that Power Query asks the entire result of the table, regardless of the fact that it is a view or a table, and then apply the filters locally into the Power Query engine. But by default, and for performance reason, all the conditions are moved to the server. I don't know if I answered the question.
So the user can specify where.
The user can specify the where condition as part of the Power Query transformation. But even if the user specifies this where condition, the where condition will be executed on the server. And the user doesn't have to know the language of the server, SQL. He knows the language of Power Query, the user interface of Power Query, and this is transformed into a SQL statement or into an MDX statement once we will have the MDX support in Power Query. Question?
The schedule refresh through the data management gateway, is that executed? I mean, when that refresh happens, it's updated in Power Pivot model. If that table in Power Pivot is from a Power Query definition, is that refresh process also executing that Power Query first and then updating the data model?
Okay, I repeat the question. What happened, actually I didn't, okay, the question is, what happened when I refresh a Power Query query in a data model? So I have a Power Pivot workbook. I publish the workbook, I refresh a table in the data model, but this table is obtained as a result of a Power Query query, right? Okay. Technically, what happened is the following. On the cloud, there is a sort of cloud version of Power Query that read the query and executed the engine of Power Query engine in the cloud, trying to fold the query into a single SQL query where it can. For the part that it cannot, it executes the query in the local engine on the cloud. And I'm sure of that. I made several tests. I spent a lot of time on that. In fact, I also found a bug for that during this test, because actually the bits that you run are not the same. In Excel, you have your local engine. The engine that works on the cloud is a different build. It's not exactly the same. And so, you know, it's a new product. I found a transformation that was not behaving the same on the cloud and on the server. But fortunately, there was an error. Instead of providing a wrong result, it just stopped when it was not supposed to do. But yes, transformations are supported, and transformations are executed as a single SQL query when this is possible by the same. Fundamentally, it is the same engine. It is just a different compilation. Okay, guys, if you have other questions, you know, I will be available tomorrow after 12 in the Microsoft booth. It's very, very powerful, which is the M language, which is probably not something that every user, every Excel user will use, but is very, very powerful. And could be leveraged by advanced users, very advanced users in Excel, to apply complex transformations. So Power Query has a user interface with several elements. We have connectors to access to different data sources. We have transformations that we can apply to the data that we gather from different data sources. And then we have the M language. Very important, especially in a corporate BI scenario, is the fact that we can share the result of a transformation. Not the data, but the query, the transformation, the definition of the query that we define in our environment. So I would like to show you what you can do with Excel and Power Query, because this will introduce us to the topic of the session, which is what happened in a corporate BI scenario. So let's start from the beginning. And here I have Excel and Power Query installed. I can connect to several databases, but since my goal is to discuss about corporate BI, let's start connecting to SQL Server, to AdventureWorks, our data warehouse in AdventureWorks. So I type demo, and I can see all the databases, and for each database, all the tables, all the views, all the data that my user, I'm connected with my user in this moment, my user can see in this database. So if my DBA, or better, if the DBA in the company is my friend, he gave me a lot of accesses to everything. And for example, I could select multiple items, and I can choose to import a few tables. As you see, I have several views here, and we will discuss views in a few moments. I can get data directly from my, DIM customer, DIM product, and fact internet sales, for example. So I just get 3 tables in this case, and I choose to load these tables directly into the data model in my Power Pivot data model. When you do that, you see that Power Query does something, and while Power Query is working, I can spend time. No, I cannot spend time. I can show you that we have in Get External Data several types of connectors. So we can connect to relational databases, we can connect to external data sources, and so we can create a data model that merge together data from Facebook, Exchange, SQL Server, and so on, and also from OData feed. Now that we have our data, we can go in our Power Pivot data model, and we can see that we not only imported data, we also imported relationships. Now, you say, Marco, this is the same thing that you can do by using just Power Pivot. And until this point, this is true. But what we can do at this point, we can apply some changes to the data, to the queries, because each of these table is in reality a query that we may change. So for example, I can go here in the editor, and this is the user interface of Power Query that enables me to, for example, go in this English product name and say I want to see these names all in uppercase, because Office team teach me that uppercase for the titles is very nice, and so now I want to use the same approach. You can apply more complex transformation, and there are many other sessions in this conference about how you can use all these tools to split columns, merge columns, pivot tables, and so on. So we can apply many transformation. And what is interesting, if you remember, this is a table in a database that has relationships with other tables. And so, for example, we can go here, and we can see that the DIM product subcategory column has a value, which is something that we can explode or expand. And we can choose, for example, to get the English product subcategory name just here. So without adding another table into my data model, I'm getting the value of the English product subcategory name from another table. Now, this is always null because we have just a few rows, but as soon as I apply and close this query, what I obtain in my data model is an updated table, the product, that will have my, let me check the product here. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Marco Russo. My email is on the slide. I want to describe briefly, shortly, what is this presentation about. This presentation is named the Power Query in Modern Corporate BI, and the idea is to quickly introduce Power Query and mostly discuss about how the self-service BI and Power Query can be merged in the corporate BI scenario. So this is the idea of this session. I will mix a few concepts, architectural concepts, with many details about how to do certain things with Power Query and other tools in the Power BI stack. So I work as a BI consultant and mentor. I wrote several books about Power Pivot and analysis services tabular, but my interest is about business intelligence, and today Power BI is the hottest topic. As I said, what is Power Query? Power Query is an add-in for Excel that you can install also, on both Excel 2010 and Excel 2013, and it enables more features if you have also a Power BI subscription. Fundamentally, it enables end user to get data from different data sources and create data models in Excel with Power Pivot, or just import data in Excel. And you can also apply transformation to the data, especially thanks to a hidden feature that is, will have my subcategory somewhere, I hope, yes, where I see all the subcategory that I downloaded. And I can repeat this again and again with all the tables. So you understand that this is not exactly what you can do with Power Pivot. In Power Pivot, I should have imported the table, I should have created a calculated column, and so on. So we leverage in some way the data model that we have in SQL Server. We are creating a more complex query that is described in a language that is called M, because in reality, the query that I'm creating is visible here as a text file. So remember, this is the exact definition of Power Query query. This is converted actually in a SQL query when I execute this, but this text file can be easily copied into an email. And this is what we will share in Power BI portal when we share this query with other people in our company. We just share this definition, not the data. Other people will be able to, for example, re-execute this query against the same data model, or just change a few details, maybe not using the editor, but using the nice user interface that this product has, by going in each single step and applying changes to each single formula that you see here, or directly going here and using this user interface. Okay, so this is more or less what you can do with Power Pivot. This is the